George Stephanopoulos decided to confront Representative Cori Bush on the issue of defund the police. So I'm curious to see what he says, what her reaction is. It's a pretty short clip. It's only 39 seconds. And I don't know why it's super duper duper blurry here, but anyway, just bear with it because I want to get to the substance of it. Let's see.
It was through that I saw how policy can help bring transformative change to communities, or it can hurt.
And you've stuck by it. In fact, you're one of the few Democrats now who still says...
By the way, she's doing this because she has a new book that just came out, so she's doing the rounds and granting interviews and stuff, and so that's the genesis of this interview, but now let's see what he says.
Let's defund the police. Are you worried at all that that could hurt some of your colleagues going into the midterm elections?
See, the thing about defund the police is we have to tell the entire narrative. People hear defund the police, but you know what they'll say? Say reallocate, say divest, say move, but it's still the same thing. We can't get caught up on the words. People spend more time focusing on the word defund than they spend on caring and addressing the problem of police violence.
So the whole thing about people spend too much time focusing on the words. Well, look, when you're talking about, there's two conversations here. There's the policy conversation and there's the politics conversation. So the focusing on the words part is the politics part of the conversation, and that literally is all about the words. Like every single thing is, how do you discuss it? How do you frame it? How do you put your best foot forward and make the best argument that appeals to the most people? So I think to say, don't focus on the words, it's like, man, that's kind of your job as a politician, right? Now, I actually, when it comes to Cori Bush in particular, I don't blame her for running on defund the police. I mean, she's from, I think, Ferguson, Missouri district, where there was one of these famous police shootings, and there was a mass movement in the streets and mass mobilization. And so she was in, like, one of the main districts in the country that was receptive to that argument. How do I know? She won. Right? Like, she won. She was out there in the streets. And so, in her case in particular, you cannot begrudge her in that particular district the winning strategy to focus on one of the main issues that's a huge issue in that district. But I will say more generally, and you guys know this, I've said this a million times, but defund the police polls at 18% around the country. So would I say every Democrat should run on defund the police? Of course not. Of course not. And it is massively self-defeating. It's a political gift to the right, and I would just say overall it's a bad idea. Now, beyond the politics of it, the policy of it is more interesting, and she sort of got into that a little bit there. Because she was saying, look, when I say defund the police, when people I know say defund the police, what she's saying is she is not a police abolitionist. She doesn't want to have, like, no police. Like, no security for the people. She doesn't want that. What she said is people say, divest. People say, whatever, cut the budget, whatever other term she used there. And this is what I found as well, is that while I'm very aggressive about the politics of this being bad, and you shouldn't run on defund the police if you're 98% of Democrats, in terms of the policy of it, that's a totally separate question, and I think that when you listen to people who make the argument and flesh out their full points, I think it's not insane, right? Like, they talk about, some people will say, cut the police budget 30%, cut the police budget 50%, and move that money into social services. So, like, for example, if somebody's having a mental health breakdown, you don't send a cop with a gun to do a job that they're not even really trained or equipped to do. You send somebody who's a mental health expert who knows exactly how to handle a situation like that, and, it won't end up with some sort of misunderstanding and somebody laying on the ground dead. So, when you hear the arguments in their totality, I think they're a lot more reasonable. But again, what I would stress for people, and I'm exempting Cori Bush from this because it works in her district, right? But what I would tell most people is you can't run on that in most places across the country. It's not going to work. You're shooting yourself in the foot. And it all goes back to basic framing stuff. Like, Bernie could have run on not Medicare for all. He could have run on a socialist government takeover of healthcare. Why didn't he do that? He didn't do that because if you talk about it like that, it'll poll at like 30%. But if you say Medicare for all, it's over 50%. So it's like, why would you actively try to make your life more difficult? Why would you try to make it harder? Why would you want to actively piss off more people than you're bringing in? It's like going into a discussion or a debate and actively trying to alienate everybody who doesn't already agree with you, right? So I just find that silly. But look, when it comes to Cori Bush in particular, in her district it worked, and clearly what she said there is, we could use whatever words you want to use, but the idea behind it is the policy, and I stand by that policy. And look, I can understand that. I can understand that. My take, you guys know this, my take on crime has always been, I'm incredibly soft on the crimes that shouldn't be crimes. Like, I don't want anybody to get locked up for drug use or even selling drugs, right? So legalize, tax, and regulate drugs, free all the nonviolent drug offenders, 100% there. But I've always been, if it's a crime that I think should be a crime, I'm actually tough on that crime, right? So if it's like murder, robbery, assault, rape, whatever, fill in the blank, like the actual crimes, white-collar criminals, Wall Street fraudsters, war criminals, in those instances, I'm like, throw the fucking book at them, right? So it's a little more of a complex conversation there, but it's interesting that he brought that question up, but it's obviously something that the mainstream media will always go back to that one well where they know, like, hey, we found an issue where the left is actually unpopular. Let's talk about that nonstop. And that's what happens. If you look at the left proposals, raising taxes on the rich, raising the minimum wage, more unionization, paid vacation time by law, universal pre-K, elder care, expand Medicare for all these things poll so well. And so what the media does is they'll take the handful of issues where the left actually has the less popular position, and they'll talk about that nonstop and give the misimpression that, like, yeah, the left and the right both have, ideas that people like and dislike, bro. Make it like a wash by doing that. That's sort of like lying through emphasis there, and it's kind of annoying. But yeah, I mean, either way, I do think it's an interesting conversation around defund the police, though.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.